30 perennial crops for endless harvests. Imagine walking into your garden 10 years from now and still pulling fresh, delicious food from the exact same plants you planted today. No replanting, no wasted effort, just pure abundance, year after year, automatically. This isn't fantasy. This is the power of perennial plants, and I'm about to show you 30 incredible options that will transform how you think about gardening forever. Before we dive into this complete guide, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Drop a like if you love the idea of easy, endless harvests, and comment below which perennial you're most excited to try. Let's get growing. Perennial crop for endless harvests. Number 1, the original king, asparagus. When you compare annual vegetables to perennial plants, think of it this way. Growing annuals is like living paycheck to paycheck. Growing perennials is like building a dividend portfolio that pays you forever. Asparagus is the absolute original here. I genuinely believe this plant might outlive me and my grandchildren. You'll see little fern fronds emerging in this bed right now, proof that asparagus is doing exactly what it's meant to do. The secret to asparagus success involves what we call crowns underground. These are the powerhouse structures that make everything work. You have 3 main ways to start asparagus: buying established crowns, growing from seed, or starting with nursery seedlings. Most people don't realize that seedling method is totally viable. Here's the real magic. The first 3 years are about patience. You're building up those underground crown structures so they can produce more and more spears. During years 1, 2, and 3, you shouldn't harvest heavily. Did I follow this advice perfectly? Absolutely not. I grabbed 1 or 2 spears myself because I wanted to taste what I planted. By year 4 and 5, this plant absolutely explodes with productivity. I've heard from gardeners whose grandmothers planted asparagus patches nearly 100 years ago, and those same plants are still producing today. This is the true original perennial that every gardener should get in the ground immediately. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 2, the pie plant, rhubarb. Ever heard someone call rhubarb the pie plant? That's because this crop is almost exclusively used in desserts. You'll find it paired with strawberries, apples, or enjoyed solo in delicious pies. The reason it's called pie plant is simple. You never really eat rhubarb by itself. Plus, here's an important fact. The leaves are actually toxic, but the stems, that's where all the magic happens. These stems are usually red, though some varieties are green, and they have this natural tartness that transforms into something absolutely magical when cooked with sugar. It's honestly my favorite pie type. Whenever I see strawberry rhubarb or apple rhubarb at a dessert menu, I choose it without hesitation. Rhubarb typically prefers cold climates, but here's exciting news. There's a variety called Victoria that actually grows beautifully in warm locations like San Diego. I currently have 2 quart freezer bags packed full of Victoria rhubarb in my freezer right now. Here's the perennial advantage. In cold climates, harvest only during spring to conserve energy for winter survival. But in warmer regions like mine, you can harvest throughout spring and even into early summer, and the plant still comes back strong every single year. What you're seeing in this particular shot is proof. Perennial growth returning from last season. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 4, the thistle that became food, artichokes. This is my artichoke patch, and I'm genuinely obsessed with this crop. Artichokes are basically thistles that decided to become edible. The key is harvesting them at the right moment, when those flower heads haven't fully developed and aren't open yet. What you're observing here is artichoke growth returning from the previous season. My process involves chopping everything down around August or September. If you live in a cold climate, cover the plant with mulch to protect those underground structures. In milder climates like mine, you'll see new growth emerge in fall, like you see right here. But in colder regions, that growth pattern starts appearing again in spring. The critical detail: Make sure you cover everything with good mulch. Frost and freeze can reach down and kill the roots if they're exposed. That mulch layer is your protection insurance. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 4, the climbing bean that keeps coming back. Think about beans, and your mind probably goes to green beans. You plant them in spring, harvest for a couple months, and they're done. But what if you could grow beans that are actually perennial and productive throughout a longer season? Say hello to scarlet runner beans. These are unique because they produce tubers underground that survive winter and return in spring, especially in milder climates. Unlike standard bush beans, these need a sturdy trellis. Mine grew over 14 feet tall this year, so you definitely need support structures. Here's why they're fantastic. Incredibly prolific, absolutely delicious, and more cold-tolerant than many other bean varieties. As a bonus benefit, they're one of the absolute best hummingbird attractors. Pollinators absolutely love them. The beans themselves are genuinely delicious. They might not be perennial in every climate, but in mild climates, expect them to return year after year. Give them a real try. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 5, the perpetual leafy green, tree collards. My friend keeps joking that I should finally get rid of this plant. My response is, it's a perennial. Why would I get rid of it? This is tree collard, and it's genuinely fascinating. You won't find tree collards in typical seed packets. They barely produce seeds at all. Instead, you start them from cuttings. I air-layered one and placed it in a grow bag. I'm actually planning to sneak this into my friend's garden so he gets his own tree collard experience. Here's what makes tree collards special. They're incredibly prolific. The leaves are tougher than most greens you'll eat, but here's the bonus. During winter, they become very sweet and soft. They're phenomenal in stews and soups where the greens soften while retaining interesting texture. Since it's perennial, you literally just keep harvesting and it keeps growing. No complicated maintenance required. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 6, the misnamed underground treasure, Jerusalem artichokes. The name is genuinely deceiving. You'd think Jerusalem artichoke is related to regular artichokes, but it's actually much closer to sunflowers. It's known by another name too, and I can confirm through direct experience that this name is accurate and rather unflattering, the fartichoke. Here's the truth. If you eat these little tubers that grow underground, you might experience some digestive effects. I believe this mostly comes down to preparation methods. There are plenty of good preparation techniques out there. These are nutritious, starchy crops. Here's why I'm standing next to this raised bed. I absolutely don't recommend putting Jerusalem artichokes in ground. They multiply like crazy. Remember when you planted potatoes and missed 1 or 2? Suddenly you have potato plants everywhere a few months later. Jerusalem artichokes work exactly the same way, except the tubers are much smaller. You're virtually guaranteed to miss some, and they'll spread everywhere. Seriously, put them in containers or raised beds. Regarding preparation, my chef friend brought over some Jerusalem artichoke shaved chips. I ate them enthusiastically, and I can honestly report no digestive issues whatsoever. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 7, the walking wonder, Egyptian walking onions. I have a tray of various onion types here, but the plant I want to highlight isn't in this collection. I'm talking about the Egyptian walking onion. This is a really cool allium variety. Here's how it works. This plant produces bulbs or sets at the top of the stem. These bulbs get heavier, fall down, and then creep through your garden. Essentially, it grows up, produces bulbs, they fall, it creeps along, and this cycle repeats. That's exactly why it's called the walking onion, and that's why it functions as a perennial in most climates. You can use these as cutting onions, those green leafy tops, or you can grab the bulbs directly. Eventually, it does get a bit unruly. When that happens, just rip out clumps. I'd remove clumps when harvesting for bulbing onions to bring everything back to manageable size. Don't let it walk all over your entire garden, but it's genuinely fun and gives you that delightful onion growing experience in a totally unique way. Perennial crop for endless harvests number 8, The dual allium option, Welsh onions and garlic chives. Over here we have garlic chives. These are technically perennial, though in colder climates they might frost over. You can protect them though. These allium types tend to handle frost better than many others. The real perennial pick I want to discuss is called the Welsh onion, also known as the perennial bunching onion or Allium fustulosum. This is a non-bulbing onion. It looks almost like a baby leek. What makes it perennial is the division method. Some crops are perennial because they don't die in winter like fruit trees. Others keep reproducing through division. This one grows in bunches and spreads through that process. It's typically used for the sweeter green tops, kind of like a less intense onion flavor. It's a cool plant. Honestly, I'm intrigued by the idea of sweeter onions. I love caramelizing onions in my kitchen, so if the tops are that sweet, consider me genuinely interested for next growing season. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 10. The tangy superfood green, Sorrel. If you love easy, convenient greens that are always ready to harvest, Sorrel is your answer. This is what it looks like. A lemony, zingy green. It's wonderful in soups. You can actually make an entire green borscht using only Sorrel. This plant is absolutely wild. It just wants to grow. In fact, it grows so much that most of it ends up getting chopped and thrown into my compost, and it still comes roaring back. Look down here and you'll see this is actually multiple plants. It's like 100 individual sorrels growing together in clumps, and it's incredibly tasty. It grows across tons of different climates and stands as one of the most low-maintenance greens I've ever grown. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 10. The intense celery. Lovage, or Lovage, however you prefer to pronounce it, is exactly that. It's basically perennial celery amplified to maximum intensity. I've tried a couple Lovage leaves fresh and raw. I'll be honest, it's quite an experience. One thing to mention is that it's super prolific when growing. It does excellent in raised beds. Similar to sorrel, it clumps and grows bigger and bigger. Make sure you actually enjoy celery flavor as your starting point if you're ever going to appreciate Lovage.
Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 11. The protein powerhouse, American groundnut. Don't you wish potatoes were perennial so you could harvest infinite, delicious tubers year-round? Well, you actually can. There's something called the American groundnut, also known as the potato plant. This crop produces both beans and tubers that are both edible. Both are incredibly protein-rich. The tubers have 3 times the protein of regular potatoes. It's perennial. It's been grown throughout the Northeast for generations. People have survived on this plant for thousands of years. Honestly, I'd never heard of this before, but learning that it's called a potato plant and an American groundnut has me genuinely excited. I'm going to find some and add them to my garden. Next year, I'm hoping to harvest both beans and potatoes from the same plant. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 12. The expanding bed, strawberries. I'm relaxing under this peach tree that was planted here, but I'm not actually talking about the peach tree. I'm discussing the strawberries growing underneath. Traditionally, many gardeners grow strawberries in various systems. Strawberries are highly versatile. They're good in containers, good in raised beds, and good in ground. Now, are they a true perennial lasting decades from the same plant? Technically, no, but not all perennials work that way either. Here's what strawberries do. They throw out runners that creep and continuously expand the bed. You'll actually see one right here. This one's saying, hey, I want to colonize that area. It's perfect for letting your patch expand. Strawberries are productive for about 2 to 3 years per plant, but every single season, all those plants throw out new runners. You can either let them spread or cut them off and root them for next season. Technically, you have the same strawberry crop year after year, even though it's not the exact same plant. Here's another detail. Choose between 2 strawberry paths. You've got June-bearing varieties that are larger and mostly fruit in June. Then you've got ever-bearing strawberries that fruit maybe 2 to 3 times yearly. They're a bit smaller. I prefer ever-bearing personally, and my climate supports strawberries for longer parts of the season. In colder climates, you might prefer June bearing for those big, juicy berries. You can do strawberries in containers, raised beds, or ground. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 13. The berry brambles, raspberries, and blackberries. You might think I'm going to talk about those dragon fruits I'm walking past, and they are technically perennials, especially indoors, but I've already made 12 videos on those. Go watch those instead. What I'm actually discussing is something I've struggled to grow somewhat. Here it is, raspberries and blackberries. In my climate, it's definitely possible, it's just a little more challenging. But in most climates, especially across the US, if you don't have raspberries and blackberries as perennials in your garden, you're honestly missing out on some of the best superfruits. They spread like absolute crazy. There are specific details about growing them. You need to understand primocanes and floricanes. You need to prune in certain ways. Pruning the wrong cane means no fruit. In the right way, we've made detailed videos on this care. But the main point, get them in the ground. A 2-wire trellis system probably controls them best because I've seen these plants in Northern California creeks and they get absolutely wild. They're spiky too, so controlled growth is definitely preferred. But honestly, especially if you have kids or anyone who loves picking fruit from the garden, it's one of the most rewarding perennial fruits you can grow. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 14. The breakfast staple, blueberries. You've definitely heard of this one. It's a delicious berry, sometimes small, sometimes large. It's a breakfast staple in granola, yogurt, pancakes. This is blueberry. Right here, I have a high bush variety. There are high bush and low bush types. In San Diego or warmer climates, we typically grow high bush, which is taller. I've got another one right behind me. They produce those larger berries that I personally prefer. In Maine, where I was recently, they grow low bush types that cover the ground like a green carpet and produce tiny wild blueberries. They make absolutely delicious pies and preserves. Here's the one critical detail about blueberries. They need acidic soil. They don't just prefer it, they absolutely need it if you want any fruit. Get them in containers with acidic soil and acidic fertilizer, and you'll harvest hundreds of dollars worth of blueberries quickly. Perennial crop for endless harvests, number 15, the black currant treasure, currants. When I visited Bulgaria as a child, the first thing I always demanded was a glass of budavinka, a soda made from black currants. When I became a gardener, I knew I had to grow this in my garden. Right here is what remains of the plant. It drops leaves in fall, but I did get a handful of delicious currants this year. These aren't berries you eat straight off the plant. They're a bit tart, the skin and seeds are present, so they're great in jams, jellies, pies, and drinks. What makes currants unique is that they're understory fruiting plants. They survive in part shade while still producing fruit. I have mine underneath this big pomegranate tree, and I still got a good harvest of delicious black currants. They don't just come in black. There are white currants, red currants, and they all have unique flavors. Give them a try and plant them under one of your tall trees. Perennial crop number 16, the cold hardy gooseberry. If you want a fun perennial for your garden, I recommend the gooseberry. It's actually very prolific. There are 2 main varieties, but honestly, either works fine. They're cold hardy down to zone 3. For those of us on the West Coast, especially in Southern California, they're uncommon. You'll see them all over the East Coast and in many colder climates. If you want a perennial doing well in cold weather, this is definitely one. Here's what I'll say. They can be spiky, so be careful. You need to prune them delicately and carefully, but pruning is necessary. They're typically not eaten fresh. Like currants, they're usually processed into jams, jellies, pies, and similar products. I think if your climate supports them, it's almost mandatory to plant them. Remember, with perennials, you can use them as landscaping, ornamental plants, and then also eat from them. Perennial crop number 17, the vineyard dream, grapes. I'm stoked to discuss this because after 3 or 4 seasons, I've finally gotten really good at growing grapes, which is what you see here. This is a flame seedless variety. The variety depends entirely on your zone, so I won't recommend specifics, but we've done complete builds on grape trellis systems. That's really the key with grapes. Setup is high maintenance, but after that, it's pretty smooth sailing. There's pruning to do, there's definitely care throughout the season, but it's mostly about training the grapevine onto your trellis system. Plant your grapes about 8 feet apart on a big wall like this. You run wrapped wire or anything straight across. set off from the wall slightly. I did 3 tiers, so there's one here, and one here. The vine comes up and spreads across everything. Then I just let it grow. This year, I got about 5 to 7 huge clusters of flame seedless table grapes. It comes back year after year and only improves over time.
Perennial crop for endless harvest number 18, the space-saving solution. Dwarf and columnar fruit trees. You might think I'm going to skip past this fruit tree because it's obviously perennial, but actually I'm talking about dwarf or columnar varieties specifically. Of course, you could grow something like the quad-grafted peach my friend has in his garden. That's excellent. But for those in smaller spaces or wanting more variety with less height, containerized dwarf or columnar fruit trees are perfect. These trees grow upright in habit and produce really well in 30 to 50-gallon containers with great soil. Many people, including myself years ago, would have loved having an apple, pear, peach, or plum in a container when living in smaller spaces. These come back year after year. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 19, the exotic flavor pineapple guava, also called feijoa. Over the years, I've become absolutely obsessed with a specific fruit that's usually not that good when you buy it from grocery stores. The guava. Most store guavas are white Mexican guavas that smell like something but don't taste like much. Right here next to me is the pineapple guava, also called feijoa. This has a unique flavor profile. It's almost savory, minty, banana-like, pineapple-like, and has a wonderful texture that you just scoop out. What makes this guava unique is that although it's technically tropical, it can even withstand a bit of frost, making it adaptable to wider climate ranges. It does wonderfully in containers or in ground. When harvesting these, the fun part is they look like stout bananas. You cut the top off and squeeze or scoop it out with a spoon. It's such a delightful treat. I look forward to it every single year. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 20, the jeweled fruit, pomegranates. This fruit has taken me time to master, but I'd say I've done pretty well recently. I'm talking about pomegranates. I have 2 varieties here, Parfania and Wonderful, both absolutely delicious. Wonderful is probably more common, though there's a cold-tolerant variety that goes to zone 6. Pomegranates are, first of all, one of the most nutritious fruits for human health. There's incredible stuff inside those areoles, that's the seed everyone calls it, and the juice. I have it several times weekly. It's genuinely simple to grow once you understand care needs. Lots of sun, lots of heat, and it doesn't want wet feet. It's adapted to pretty arid climates. You want to prune so it's not super tall and hard to access. There are crazy spikes, so you don't want it everywhere. We pruned ours from about 8 or 9 feet down to around my height, 6 feet plus. When leaves die off, that's when you get into the internal structure and start pruning dead, diseased, or damaged branches. Unlike most fruit trees, you'll prune this down to more than one trunk. It grows like a bush or tree. I recommend the bush with 3 to 5 stems. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 21, the passion producer. This next one is obvious and absolutely one of plant grower Adam's favorite plants overall, but it is definitely perennial. I'm talking about passion fruit. Here's an unripe green one. We'll let that one continue growing. There are hundreds here. Money does grow on trees. Here's a riper purple one. The variety I'm growing is called Frederick. Cut it open and look at that, just dripping out with that tartness, delicious flavor, and sweetness if you harvest at the right time. The prolific growth of passion fruit is incredible. T-posts, chicken wire, twine, any trellis, it goes absolutely crazy. You need to cut it back seriously during the season because it fruits on new growth only. That vine won't produce passion fruits next year, so might as well cut it off. This is our second planting mostly because it got too insane. I had to cut it back heavily and decided to replant for the next season. It's a true perennial, and you can grow it in lower zones than you think, especially if you buffer it against something that captures heat. A dark stone wall or cinder block wall can push heat out as temperatures drop in the evening and throughout the season. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 22, the spring messenger. What if I told you there was a tree that literally tells you when spring arrives? It blooms once the ground thaws. I'm speaking of the serviceberry, also called the harbinger of spring. As that ground begins to soften and thaw, that tree blooms. It's a perfect signal for home gardeners to start working in their yards. It's great that it can be grown as pure ornamental, but the berries are edible. You need to cook them down into something useful, but that's totally optional. If you don't eat them, birds and native wildlife absolutely go crazy for serviceberries. For an added bonus, this tree provides beautiful fall colors.
From spring through fall, it gives you everything needed and tells you when to get started gardening. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 23. The heat-loving vine, Malabar spinach. There are 4 perennial spinach-like plants perfect for hot summer weather when regular spinach can't survive. The first one you've probably heard of is Malabar spinach. It produces crazy purple berries. It loves heat and humidity. And here's the important detail. Don't eat it raw. It's slimy when fresh, but cooked down becomes perfectly delicious. It's used in many different cuisines. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 24. The low-growing alternative longevity spinach. Next up is longevity spinach. This is a low-growing leafy green that doesn't handle frost at all. The bonus benefit, you can eat it fresh or cooked. It doesn't climb trellises like Malabar, but it's perfect for filling lower garden spaces. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 25. The purple-backed green, Okanagan spinach. If you want a green with extra color, there's Okanagan spinach. What makes this plant interesting is the purple backing on leaves. It's bushy, eaten fresh or cooked, and will take over your garden if you're not careful. Constantly harvest or prune it. It's not frost-tolerant whatsoever. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 26. The vertical producer, tree spinach, also called chia. This is really cool because it grows vertically and produces tons of leaves. When you're done with the season, pollard it, essentially cutting it down to trunk level. It'll send up new growth and provide another giant bounty of leafy greens that must be cooked. This one isn't for eating fresh. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 27. The shade-loving pea plant, Katuk. I just remembered there's a shade-loving tree that tastes like peas. It's only grown in hot climates. If you want something like a spinach replacement, this is one where you eat leaves and shoots. Peas don't generally grow in warm climates, so this is a good substitute. It's called Katuk. One great thing is that although it can't handle frost, it thrives in shade. In marginal climates that get a little cold, plant it along a fence where you trap heat. Then you can eat roots, shoots, and leaves from this delicious pea-tasting shrub. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 28. The nutrient powerhouse, Moringa. This next one I became familiar with from health supplements before the gardening world. Then I met someone growing it at farm level. I'm talking about Moringa, the nutrient tree. Moringa powder is used in health concoctions. I'm not a doctor or nutritionist, but I've tried it and it's excellent. It's also a quick growing plant, sometimes too quick. You need to prune it actively to keep it contained. If you love Moringa, it likes you back. It's not hard to root from cuttings. You can give it to friends. The farmer I met propagated his whole farm this way. He kept chopping cuttings and sticking them in ground, growing more and more. It's fun as a perennial for health benefits or just beautifying your garden space. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 30, the unique berry, elderberry. Elderberries are one of the most underrated perennial fruits available. These shrubs produce stunning clusters of berries that are incredible in syrups, jams, and traditional remedies. They're incredibly hardy, grow across most climates, and actually improve soil health while they're growing. Birds love elderberries, so you'll attract plenty of wildlife. Plus, in spring, the delicate white flowers are absolutely beautiful. Perennial crop for endless harvest number 31, the comeback champion, sea kale. Sea kale is an incredibly resilient coastal plant that's been underused in modern gardens. This perennial produces delicious shoots in spring that taste similar to asparagus, but with a subtle briny flavor. It's supremely cold-hardy, extremely drought-tolerant, and actually prefers poor soil. Once established, sea kale requires almost no maintenance. The beautiful blue-green foliage provides year-round garden interest, and the small white flowers attract pollinators. Plant it once, and it'll produce for decades.
That was quite the fascinating list of 30 perennials. I'm genuinely going to add the groundnut as soon as I can find it to my garden. We carry many of these perennials as seeds or live plants through our network of partners. Here's the honest truth. I'm not abandoning annuals entirely. I still genuinely love them. I'm just throwing perennials into the mix because the value they provide is incredible. If you've made it this far, you're clearly serious about growing. Please subscribe to Backyard Crops and turn on those notifications. Share this video with anyone you know who gardens or wants to start. Comment below and let me know which perennial you're most excited about trying. Your feedback helps us create better content. The sun's getting low. Good luck in your garden and keep on growing.